wider audience, and certain conduct is unacceptable and will not be tolerated. Should any person not wish to be recorded, I advise they should leave the meeting room prior to any statements being made. Any defamatory statements made are not the position of the Council and remain an individual's opinion. Council accepts no responsibility for any defamatory statements, and all liability remains with the person making the remarks. And I'd also like to do an acknowledgement to country. I'd like to acknowledge the Kamilaroi people, who are the traditional custodians of this land. I'd also like to pay respect to elders past and present, and extend that respect to other Aboriginal people present here this evening. And next, I would like to invite everyone to be upstanding for the meeting prayer. Almighty God, we humbly beseech Thee to vouchsafe Thy blessing upon this council, direct and prosper our deliberations to the advancement of Thy glory and the true welfare of the people of the Regional Council and Australia. Amen. Amen. And now, councillors, I'd like to formally open the meeting. And the first item on the agenda is apologies and leave of absence. And as we are all in attendance and there are no leave of absence tendered, we'll move to item 2, community consultation. This is a portion of the meeting that Council sets aside to hear representations from community members. This evening we have one member of the community to represent to Council. Mr Gill, if you would wish to come forward, and you have about 3 minutes to make a presentation. Thank you. If you could introduce yourself and the matter you wish to speak to, please.
Peter Gill, Mayor, councillors, staff and guests. I've made nil reportable donations. I speak against the item 7.2. I do, however, support subdivision to cater for growing Tamworth. My focus is on good planning rather than being diametrically opposed. Like councils, I've had 4 days to consider the matter. Being a change of plus 40% from 1,670 to 2,350 lots on what has previously been exhibited, I question whether this is not ground for a re-exhibition prior to the outcome of tonight going to gateway approval before being presented fait accompli at a subsequent exhibition. There appears to be significant latitude in the figures portrayed about the lot size and the total lot yielded, total area yielded by the subdivision. There's figures of 10 per hectare, 2,350 lots total, etc. A table of yields would have assisted. The fact that much of the discussion behind the matter is contained in confidential attachments precludes a more detailed analysis by me. The move to lower minimum lot size from 600 square metres to 450 square metres is not supported by me carte blanche. I could live with a small percentage, perhaps 5% maximum, and this would need to be written into the motion. As a resident, the issues which really impact me are traffic amenity related to access, law and order due to antisocial behaviour occasioned by cars parked out roadside. In another view, it's about preventing bad planning decisions and the amenity of not having vehicles parked roadside. Many households today with children of driving age have more than 2 vehicles, some of which end up residing roadside, coupled with boats, caravans, etc. Whilst appreciating the 2 edges of the sword in this case, Tamworth is not Sydney and should resist the views of Sydney-centric planning advice. If we want to grow and prosper, we also need to offer things not available elsewhere, e.g. space. Having commuted back and forth to Sydney for some 20 years, I can say it was always a relief to exit the M1 freeway on a Friday night. In January 2017, I made a significant and considered response to the exhibition based on 1,670 lots. I do note some forward progress on drainage and business hub size. However, what has transpired with the community-based facilities, schools, childcare facilities, etc., and issues about access from existing roads and internal road network spines remains obscure. I often see council self-congratulate itself on good planning. Sadly, for whatever reason in the current development, this is not publicly viewable. Transparency underpins public confidence. To me, traffic planning is something which needs to be considered in a holistic manner rather than solely situationally. Bylong Arcadia represents in excess of 20% the size of existing Tamworth Township area. During some discussion as part of the Gnu Road consultation with Transport New South Wales, I was surprised those I spoke to were not aware of the Bylong Arcadia development and the likely traffic loads arising. Considering a 40% ramp up in lot numbers and 4 days for the public to review this proposal at this meeting tonight, which then gets submitted for a gateway approval before being exhibited again, we then have the change being presented fait accompli at the next public exhibition, and from there, the possibility of retreat, given the pre-approval of the case tonight, will become difficult. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Gill. And councillors, that completes our community consultation portion of the meeting. I'll move on now to item 3, minutes of the previous meeting. With Councillor Wilson and Councillor Empey, thank you. Are there any matters councillors wish to consider with regard to the minutes? If not, I'll put that motion. Those in favour?
Aye.
Those against? Motion is carried. Item 4, disclosures of interest. Any councillors have any disclosures they wish to tender? Councillor Inglis.
Yeah, thanks, Mr Mayor. Item 7.2, as when it was first considered by council, so I'll be consistent in my declaration on that one. So item 7.2, it's a less than significant non-pecuniary interest. And I will leave the chamber, and the reason is my daughter owns a property in Rodeo Drive, and it's in the plan as a potential collector road, actually. So I'll leave the chamber for that one, Mr Mayor. And items 9.3 and 9.4, which will seem a bit unusual because they're our financial reports, but since the last council meeting, I've been appointed as a director of State Cover Mutual Limited, and Tamworth Regional Council, in fact, is a member of State Cover Mutual and holds a partly paid share in that entity. So it's 9.3 and 9.4 for tonight, and I'll declare that as a less than significant non-pecuniary interest, and I will remain in the chamber. So I won't leave for that, but I think it's important that I declare it. And Mr Mayor, I was looking at it, trying to do it as a standing declaration, but I won't because you never know what the item numbers are each time. So I'll just have to do it each time. And I think I'll do it every time there's any financial report. So the quarterly revisions, budgets, because council's a shareholder in the entity that I'm a director on. And I have put that in type for you. Make it a bit easier, Madam Secretary.
Thank you. Any further declarations, councillors? If not, we'll move on to through item 5. There is no mayoral minute, and item 6, there's no notice of motion. That brings us to item 7.1. Move Councillor Webb and Councillor Wilson. Thank you. Councillor Webb, do you wish to speak to your motion?
Well, look, I will, Mr Mayor. I mean, it's pretty clear cut. There's 4 councillors that are part of that committee that discuss these things. There's a couple of points there that I guess for the public have created a bit of interest, and that is that we are going to write or we're calling to approval to write to our local state member for support for the Matrix program, and I think that's important that we do that. I have had some feedback that we probably, while it's a great idea to be doing what we're doing, we probably need to get some more information on the program as we build and work towards carrying out further discussions on that, but we still, and I agree with that, but I think we still need to certainly move forward and ask for Kevin's support. I think part of that program will hopefully deliver to our community some more, if we get support from the government, will deliver more trained people to our region. And that's one of the things that we really do need to hone in on. And of course the other dot point is about, and I've had some phone calls about this too, Council writing to the Premier requesting additional government and non-government agency be allocated more funding and encouraged to locate within West Emerald Precinct, which is something we've talked about for a long time. That doesn't include the police. We certainly don't want to try and encourage the police to set up another station over there. That would be counterproductive. But there are a lot of government agencies, not-for-profit government agencies and fully funded government agencies that have a focus in that area that it wouldn't hurt for us to have some more, I guess, interaction over on that side of the river, and in particular around our youthie. So I certainly commend the motion, and hope that we can move forward with that further into the future. As I say, with the Matrix program, there's a lot more work to do on that. We certainly need the support from our local member.
Thank you. Any councillors wish to speak against the motion? Any councillors wish to make comment? Councillor Wilson.
Yes, a couple of things, Mr Mayor. I'll do the good one first. People might notice that our graffiti statistics always remain consistent. I think in this period of reporting there were seven items of graffiti that were removed. I think the last period of reporting there were 6. And that's because Council manages it so well, and we really need to commend those involved under Gina Tabiri and the amazing way that the graffiti in our place is managed. And I've had people tell me when I've been up at the lookout, they feel safe in Tamworth because there's not a lot of graffiti around, so that's great. The second item I'd like to mention is the one that Councillor Webb referred to, which is the Matrix Model Program. And I've had some fairly substantial feedback on this from people who are saying this is, I've been involved from family with really substantial drug addictions, and those that have been here might remember that some time ago we tried to get a rehabilitation facility here and it didn't work. I think Dubbo got one, and the Matrix Model Program is really working on a program that keeps a person within the community. And we do need more information on this. We do really need to know how it works. We do need to have comparative successful figures that show success after 2 years, success after 5 years. We need to substantiate what we're hoping to achieve. There are a couple of people who are quite frightened because they've lived, older people, lived in a house with a child who's been afflicted by ice, and is quite honestly terrified at the thought that we might focus on a program that keeps that person in the home, and with all the uncertainty and the fear that that's involved. So we need to go into this eyes wide open, and make comparative choices. Certainly follow through and get information, but make sure that we're making the best choice, not a choice. Thanks.
Thank you. Any further comments, councillors? Councillor Rubber.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I agree with Councillor Wilson in relation to that. I think that while I will support this Matrix Model Program, I think it shouldn't be a one-size-fits-all. I believe that you know, there are times when people need to be protected from themselves and the community needs to be protected from those people. And hence the need for, you know, drug rehabilitation centres, because, you know, sometimes you've got to have that exclusion from the source of the problem, and they can be the, you know, part of the answer to that. So while I support this, I think that the government shouldn't be wiping its hands of or institutions or facilities that will provide that protection to the individual that is, you know, labouring under the weight of drug addiction, and the community and families that are suffering the results of that addiction.
Thank you. Councillor Betts.
Yes, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I'd too support the matrix model, and having listened to many people, experts in the field, and doing a fair bit of research myself, it's certainly one model that we really need to look at and pursue. But the issue that really concerns me, and I know the police are doing an absolutely fantastic job in Tamworth, and as we've seen in the body of the report, the crime rates are, you know, on a fairly low ebb, except for youth crime, and that's one of the issues that I think we really need to tackle as a community, a holistic approach to the community. And I'd like to see at our next Crime Prevention Committee meeting that we really look at some strategies that we can work with the police to try and reduce that youth crime, because it is probably one of our significant issues that we need to deal with as far as crime goes. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor MP.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Well, I live over in the general vicinity of that part of Tamworth. I live over in Hillview, and hardly a night goes by where I don't hear a siren of either a police vehicle or a fire engine, a fire brigade vehicle, making its way over to that part of Tamworth. In fact, I spoke to a member of the fire brigade on the weekend who said that at one stage, not too long ago, they would attend a fire and they would be almost attacked by people out there, and as if to say, we don't want you to put the fire out, just let it burn and go away. So things are good in some respects. I think I agree with the other councillors. I think the matrix model and any other model is worth trying. I think services and visible services is certainly a key to both youth crime and general crime. I know drug rehabilitation is very important, but not all crime is drug driven. Some crime, particularly with youth crime, is as a result of other factors, including boredom and including just a lack of a loving home, to be honest. And I think the services and a wide variety of services setting up in that side of Tamworth, in that part of Tamworth. We have a youth centre over in that part of Tamworth with a lot of empty rooms, and I know we've had some discussion previously about trying to fill some of those rooms with some tenants and with some services and so forth. I really think that's worth another tilt to try and attract more services to Tamworth in that area of Tamworth where a lot of the services and the work that the services conduct is required.
Thank you. Any further comments, councillors? If not, I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Those against? The motion is carried. Item 7.2.
Mr. Mayor, I'll just depart.
Thank you. We have a mover in Councillor Tickle. Do we have a second? Councillor Empty, thank you. Councillor Tickle, do you wish to speak to your motion?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. The first one I heard, the creation of more lots, I had the reaction of the speaker this evening, and I thought, oh, it's going to be a lot more rooftops out there. However, with reading further into the report and thinking about it more, I do think that it's a good idea to be creating more lots, and there still will be a choice in lot sizes. At first I envisaged the whole thing of being, really small, 450 lots. We have had experiences in the past, and still have, where we've had bigger lots and they've been slow to sell. Some have been fast in some areas, and there still are larger lots around this city if people desire those. So this presents diversity, and there's still choice. There's 450 lots and 600. And then we have the assurance within the report that there'll be a maximum of 10 lots per hectare, so which also demonstrates that there perhaps won't be very close and cluttered. It's a growth area of Tamworth, close to our city, and the south of Tamworth is growing rapidly, and so it presents an opportunity to have more lots. What I was going to say though is that, and I think it's important for any subdivision, and the challenge is to create a quality subdivision, irrespective of the size of the lots. With clever planning, we can do this. And it has been done, and increasingly we're seeing more and more innovation in planning. And we need plenty of green space. I know our guidelines say what we're meant to have, but we don't always have it. We have to ensure plenty of green space, canopy of trees, water-sensitive urban design. We've talked about it a lot. There's a motion on the table supported by all of the councillors here. We have to make sure that that is fully implemented to the latest design. Transport links, and some of the points that were raised by the speaker earlier. They're just some of the many essential considerations. And in our own sustainability strategy, which we have in the business papers this evening, there are other important considerations in there that we could take into account with this subdivision. It does provide flexibility and diversity and housing choice, and provides assurance, as was said earlier, of the limitation of the dwellings per hectare. I think that we all have to think of the diversity that's required. Not everybody wants a huge block. A lot of people want to live in a semi-detached place. So we've got a shortage of diversity of housing in Tamworth. But the last thing we want to see, and I agree with the speaker, that we don't want to see rooftop upon rooftop upon rooftop. We have to be clever with the planning. So it's the quality of the subdivision. There are many good examples of subdivisions over in that South Tamworth area, and we've got some terrible examples around town. So I think it presents an opportunity to show what we can do, and that we must insist on it being done in conjunction with the developer.
Thank you. Any councillors wish to speak against the motion? Councillor Rodder.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I tend to agree with the speaker in community consultation in relation to this matter, and believe that considering the increase of lots number from 1,670 to 2,350 probably would warrant going back to the public and asking them what their thoughts are on some of the proposals. This is probably an example of a retrospective changing of the goalposts that will deliver a financially handsome outcome for some, but it doesn't appear to consider the impact on current adjoining residents or the current aged road infrastructure and services, and makes no mention about new schools or medical services vital to accommodate the growth. And on some of those 450 square metre blocks, parking may virtually be non-existent within some of the tiny road reserves, with parking on the footway. And imagine if the residents in those tiny blocks chose to throw a party, the congestion in those streets if they were like 5 metre wide road reserves. And I do believe that just because our Blueprint 100 mentions high density housing options, it doesn't mean that this will deliver happy or contented residents. But we suffer a whole range of crime activities, as was sort of previously alluded to in the prior recommendation, that are impacting our residents that the state government seems to fail to address. And then we got that issue, that invidious issue of water, and we saw how perilously close we got to day zero last year, and that may happen again without any assurances or legislative changes to water management, because we don't own the water supply storages, and the government is keen to hit us with more charges, as we've seen through IPART. I don't believe that we should be discounting the future amenity and aesthetics of our city to benefit a few with tiny winding road infrastructure. But I do get the point that Councillor Tickle mentioned in relation to having those options. And there would be people that would be happy to have those smaller blocks of land, but you can see the limitations of those in inner Sydney suburbs, and they are, they're parking options, and certainly the roads that wind around those parts of Sydney are certainly very tiny. Look, and I think the other problem that many of our residents complain to me about, that we, particularly in relation to, say, water issues and infrastructure, that our council appears to struggle to look after the road, footpath and park infrastructure, curb and guttering infrastructure that we already have in many of our residential areas. That they believe it's rough, and and yet here we want to continue to grow and put more pressure on already overstretched budgets. And as we grow, the answer to more requests for footpath here, a street light there, a road fix over there, curb and guttering. Some of it promised 40 years ago to residents of Westdale, as I've been told, and I've given up counting how many times the answer is no to fixing that infrastructure, and I think that that's very frustrating for residents. And I only hope that this proceeds, that we get it right and provide the infrastructure, the road infrastructure, and all the other fixes that we need to ensure that we're not transferring the impact of a new subdivision onto the current residents that are already labouring under crumbling infrastructure.
Councillor Wilson?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I might just like to add, we've actually got roads in Tamworth that have been waiting over 100 years for curb and guttering, Wilson Avenue and Griffin Avenue. This was quite an interesting development. When this first happened, I think it was under the charrette format, and so it was innovative, and I think it was the first subdivision that we actually looked at in that format, and I found that incredibly impressive. I've just got some thoughts here and some questions, so I'll shoot them all out together and then perhaps have some answers. Tamworth hasn't been good at urban design, and urban design is so important. We're getting better at it, but we only have to drive around and see we haven't historically been good at it. It's good to know we're getting better. However, the consideration of cost delivery for both developer and CRC should not compromise high quality urban design and the production of a cohesive and positive green community living space. And I think an eclectic collection of lot sizes is really important, especially as research shows that we're really short on small lot sizes. Incidentally, we already do have 450 lot sizes. If you look at places like Carinbar, off Kalala Lane, off Panorama Road, and that we already do have some of those in Tamworth. One of my concerns is that it's actually a minimum of 10 sites within a hectare, not the maximum. So I'd be concerned if 1 hectare had all the minimums together. I think there's value in mixing those up, so I'd like to confirm that. I'd like to know when the lot sizes are reduced from 800 square metres to 450 square metres, and the reason for that was to align minimum lot size. Well, essentially they already were aligned at a minimum of 600 and 800, so they already were aligned, it's just been reduced. And it was to standardise so now it's standardised still, but just decreased. I would like to ask shortly, the floor space ratio has increased. I don't quite understand that. Does that mean that more of the block will be able to be taken up on floor space? I'll ask that question shortly. I'd like to know if road widths will be consistent throughout the whole area, or whether road widths will be changing. When we get a lot of minimum lot sizes, such as 450 lot sizes, what I feel we don't want is a line-up of garages with living at the back. So it compromises the opportunity for residents within that community to interact and mix and mingle, because you've got a driveway, a garage, no fences, children are out the back, and it's very isolating community. I think we need to make sure that doesn't happen. There's benefit in this because we don't want to see good productive land being devoured by an urban sprawl. So I see good and bad in it. What I don't want to see is what Councillor Tickle alluded to, is rooftops piled on top of one another, or two-storey places where one is looking into each other's bathroom window. But to make an eclectic collection where you've got smaller lots next to larger ones and medium-sized ones, I think is of value.
Councillor Wilson, if you wish to ask any questions, you've just
My
about used
question
your
is the
full
floor
time.
space allocation. Will there be a maximum number per hectare? I know there's a minimum. Will there be a maximum number? And I like the idea of increasing choice, but I just like them to be mixed. So they're my main questions, please. And the road width.
That's a very confusing question. Could you just put it again, please?
My question is the floor ratio in relation to the change of size. Can I have that explained exactly? Will road widths be consistent? And is there a maximum number per hectare? I know we've got a minimum number. Is there a maximum number of properties per hectare? There could be there and I've missed it. And will they be able to be mixed? In other words, eclectic.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. There will be a maximum number of lots. So when we take the maximum number of lots and a minimum size for those lots, and you work it out, it's not going to be, it's very unlikely that it's going to be more than the actual minimum density because the number of lots are set. And as you've rightly said, Councillor, it's about getting a variety of housing types and therefore a variety of land sizes to allow those housing types. So a lot of the detail of this will come out in the development control plan. You actually don't, you don't put it into the changes to the local environmental plan. So some of the details that you've spoken about in trying to get the quality and the design outcomes that we want will come out in that development control plan, which will also come to council and go on to a public exhibition. But totally agree with you. And I don't think any of us want all these rooftops. That would be the last thing we want for a new development. We want to set the standard, and we certainly will require those developers, the developers that have land there, to meet those quality requirements. In terms of the floor space ratio, from my reading of it, and Andrew might correct me if I'm wrong, but that's about the actual commercial area. So that's the neighbourhood centre, am I correct there? So it doesn't apply to the residential. The residential is determined by that density in terms of the number of lots. But the commercial areas, that means half of the site can be developed, and that makes sense for a really low neighbourhood type centre where you're not going to have it taking up potentially the whole of the lot, and you want neighbourhood shops there. The road, I think you were asking about the road widths, and I don't know that I can confirm that. I might need Andrew or Mitch to respond to that, please.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So the road widths, there will be, collector roads, two types of local roads, 9 metre and 11 metre wide pavements, all within a 20 metre wide road reserve. That will all be detailed in the development control plan and also the structure plan, which was the outcome of the charrette process. So the DCP, the structure plan will come to council as one document which will then go on public exhibition where that greater detail will be in those documents.
Thank you. Any further discussion, councillors? Councillor Impey?
Thanks, Mr Mayor. So, as I understand, it sounds like there's a lot more detail to come. Yeah, through the structure of the plan and the DCP, of course. Because I know we've had an increase to 2,350, and I guess in 5 or 6 or 10 years' time, I'd hate to see that increase even further through some change that is coming from left field. I am, however, of the view that having a variety of lots and sizes and so forth is a good idea. We see it already in the Heights area and the Peak, where we have terraces in and amongst 450 lot sizes and various other sizes, and they're not that far away as the crow flies. We've got 1 acre, 1 acre, 4,000 square metre sizes. So it's about providing people who want to move here or sell here and rebuild the opportunity to have flexibility and all due respect and so forth to those who have spoken. But I think having flexibility is a good thing as we go forward and as a growing city.
Thank you. Councillor Maxwell?
Yes, Mr Mayor, I just want to make virtually one comment. I'm uncomfortable with retrospective changes, and I always have been, so I will be voting against this motion.
Thank you. Any further comments? Councillor Webb?
Yeah, Mr Mayor, I don't disagree with everything that our public speaker said in public access time, but I think we've all got to understand that this is probably one of the subdivisions. It's the first developments that we've had come before us where we've actually had industry and staff sit down and try and develop something for the future. And I think there's a lot of positiveness in that. I think that the changing demographics in this world that we live in, meaning that we have to do things differently. People want different things. So the diverse range of lot sizes in this particular development probably mirror what industry is saying. This is what we foresee we're going to need into the coming 10, 15 years. And I think that's very important that we as community representatives take on board. We're trying to grow our city in a sensible way, and we need to, I guess, market our city to those in the outside world as a progressive city and a city that's moving with the times. And I think we've been very smart in involving industry in helping us make those decisions on how this works. So we've got the staff on one hand that are putting together and developing plans that will meet the compliance, all the compliance and the governance that needs to be met. We've got industry on the other hand saying, well, this is what the people out there in the market are looking for. So there is a great diverse range there. In terms of the lot sizes, I think we've got a bit of a buffer around this against the subdivisions that are existing, and I think that's a very good thing. Does give us some room for movement, but I really do think that this is just moving into the future. I think Councillor Helen Tickle said something very important tonight, and that is that however we put this subdivision together, it's got to be a quality subdivision, and I think that's what the staff have been working towards. And of course industry would want that so they can market the blocks. But I think having green space and all of the other stuff around it to make this an attractive subdivision is extremely important. I do understand the angst about some changes about it, but if we do go back to the public, we're probably not going to achieve an awful lot. Because we'll go back with what's in front of us and there'll be some comments made. I doubt very much there would be any major changes. And I think that the staff in industry have done a wonderful job in putting something before us that's probably going to take us through the next 10, 15 years with what is going to be needed and help us grow this city in a very positive way.
Thank you. Any final comments, councillors? Councillor Impey?
I'll just make one further comment, please, Mr Mayor, and that is
Very quickly.
Yep, I'm not entirely thinking that the lot sizes is the key issue. I think it's the way traffic is managed, and I think with discussion around a ring road or a bypass or whatever you want to call it in that vicinity, I think that will be the greatest challenge in moving forward in how we grow and how we manage growth is traffic management.
Thank you. Councillor Tickle, do you? I will now put the motion. Those in favour?
Aye.
Those against? The motion is carried. Item 8.1.
Sorry, we have to.
Oh, Councillor Inglis, yeah. Thanks, Mitch. Councillor, so that brings us to item 8.1. Move Councillor Betts and seconded Councillor Impey. Thank you. Councillor Betts, do you wish to speak to your motion?
Yeah, very briefly, Mr Mayor. I think this proposed sculpture is probably a real landmark for Tamworth, and I think it just shows where Tamworth is actually headed as far as its development as a major rural and regional centre. It's a gateway to Tamworth. It is right at the gateway to Tamworth from the airport, and it's a gateway around the new Global Gateway Enterprise area, which is probably one of the greatest industrial potential developments that is in country New South Wales. And I think having something like this will really be a signature that really signifies Tamworth. $6,000 to get the design, and as the report said, it can be scaled up or down to the budget. So I'm very excited to have something that is a real statement that coming into Tamworth. Thanks, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Any councillors wish to speak against? Any councillors wish to make comment? Councillor Impey?
I agree with Councillor Betts. I'll disagree with one small thing though. I think it's the greatest in New South Wales, if not Australia, not just regional New South Wales. I think it's a fantastic industrial development.
Thank you. Councillor Inglis.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. As chair of the Track Act Committee, and I was the councillor on the working group that looked at the at all the proposals, and it was like always when you have working groups to look at these sorts of things, everyone has a view and opinion. But this one was unanimous in the context of the submissions that we had. And I think from memory there might have been about 8 or something. And taking flight, I think the only issue, it is all subject to CASA approval and Transport for New South Wales. I think the CASA one will be interesting because we do want it lit. And just flying in the other day, I'd sort of forgotten that I particularly took notice, and it's right under the flight path. Not quite exactly under, but real close. So hopefully there's not an issue there, but it is important that it be lit because that adds to it. And I think the only other thing that'll be of discussion will be which way it actually points, the direction of the taking flight structures. There was a little bit of debate around the best way to do that, so look forward to those discussions. So well done to Bridget and her staff and Mark Gardner. Mark, as an engineer, his first engineer that I've seen who actually gets rather enthusiastic about art, so good on you, Mark.
Thank you. Further discussion, councillors? Councillor Wilson?
Brief discussion. The direction was really interesting, as Councillor Inglis said. Whether the arrow points out of Tamworth, in other words, I won't give my opinion, or whether it points towards Tamworth is quite challenging. And I think our director was Jackie O'Neill said, being near an airport, it's really important the elevation is up and it's not pointing down, because there's great superstition with how things point near airports. So you might like to elaborate on that, but I found that very interesting. So we certainly need to make the points go up rather than down.
Thank you. Further discussion, councillors? Councillor Webb?
I'll just make one comment, Mr Mayor. I'm not sure. I find it rather interesting, this particular design, and I'm just not sure. But anyway, I haven't been a part of it. I've been away when there's been other discussions on it, but that's how I feel about it.
Thank you. If there's no more discussion, councillors, I'll put the motion. Those in favour?
Aye.
Those against? The motion is carried. Item 8.2. Move Councillor Tickle, thank you. And Councillor Wilson. Councillor Tickle, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. It's encouraging to see the sustainability progress that Tamworth Regional Council has made over the last 4 years in this report, but can I say over the last 10 years, or 12 years even, since I've been on council. Like, every year we're doing more and more and more. We've done so much with energy, we've done so much with waste and water, and we're getting smarter and smarter all the time. There's new technology out there all the time, which we're embracing. So I think it's very encouraging, and the community would be pleased to read this report and note the further advancements that we're making. A lot of work has been done to reach the point that we're at, but we have a lot more work to be done. There's also been considerable investment by this council to achieve the outcomes that we see in the report. The report is under the themes of energy, waste, water and carbon emissions. And the community has spoken at community consultations and told us they want to tell us to be a sustainable city and to be a leader. So with ever-changing environmental and technological advancements, we have many challenges and opportunities. Like every week we're reading of something new, how you can recycle, how you can generate energy, new ways to do solar. It is just every day, just about practically, there is something new. There's new advancements, there's new science. We have a real challenge to keep up with that. I don't think we'll ever be ahead of it, but to keep up with it. So I've got every confidence in our Tamworth Regional Council that we can do it and that we can be a sustainable leader in its practices. And I thank the staff that have taken us to this point, and as I said, I have every confidence that we can keep on going. Just on a lighter note, one item of waste, and we've recognised this with our organics recycling, is food waste. And it's interesting to note that recipe cooked up from Coles, they're talking about using all the parts of the food, don't waste. We're one of the most wasteful countries in the world. We don't like that, just chuck it in the bin. Most other countries, they shudder at the amount of food that we waste. Like, who eats spinach stalks? They're telling us here we should be eating cauliflower leaves. Do we eat them? Probably not, but most other countries in the world do. Where does it end up? In our waste. So perhaps another thing we could look at is with restaurants and even residents, and helping them to minimise their waste by using more of the food item rather than it being grown, which is using energy and more of it, everything else. And then we just, because it's cheap in Australia, we don't care. People just seem to throw it out, but it all creates this problem of waste. But I just thought I'd mention that. I was quite interested, Curtis Stone's not stored to eat cabbage leaves, just like Chinese grains. So there you go.
Thank you. Any further comments?
Cauliflower.
Any further comments, councillors? Councillor Betts?
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. I think it's a fantastic report. One of the things that I think we need to do, because this council has done an amazing amount of work in that area, and I'm not sure that we've got it communicated out to the broader community, because too often you hear people say, what have we done? But if you have a look what we've done as a council, it is quite amazing. And part of the Sustainable Strategy Review Plan that we're taking out to the community, and I know we talked about our annual operation plan and how we're going to deliver that. I think it's an opportunity to actually give the public and the broader community the actual results of what this council's done, because it is quite amazing. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Further discussion, Councillor Webb?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, it is a good report, and if I can just talk about it in terms of the themes. Theme 1 is energy, and of course we're being very smart. We're increasing our energy efficiency and that sort of stuff, and that's great, and we should be. Waste, I think we're doing a great job there. Efficiency and increased water management efficiently is working really well, but I get very worried about this reduction in carbon emissions. And this talk about zero carbon emissions by 2050. A lot of people looking at it logically are saying it probably can't happen. So we need to be careful whilst we go down this track that we don't paint ourselves into a corner where we're going to be doing things in a way that's going to be costing our ratepayers more money than it should, because we're pursuing this, I'll call, unrealistic goal of net carbon emissions by 2050. So we need to be very careful about that. The cost of power, since we've started developing renewables, has done nothing but go up. We talk about it coming down. I can't see where renewables have become more affordable. They haven't become more affordable. Energy has not become more affordable because of renewables. It's got dearer. So we need to be careful. Whilst we're doing all the good things and reducing the amount of energy that we use, which is fantastic, that we don't burn ourselves up trying to meet goals set by other agencies and other governments, and particularly the United Nations, that are saying they're going to end poverty by doing all this. I think all they're going to do is increase it. Because in time to come, doing all the things that they're talking about will mean that some people will not be able to afford motor cars. Some people will not be able to afford to pay their power bills. And we've got to be very careful that we don't push down that track too hard too quickly. So I'm not one for rushing into that carbon emission reduction stuff too much. The rest of it's fantastic.
Thank you. Councillor MP.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I think it was sort of alluded to previously by another councillor, I forget who, but if we compare ourselves to where we were in 2005 to now, let alone 2030, it wouldn't surprise me if we're pretty close to that 35% emissions reduction already. I'm not sure whether there's a way of being able to calculate that, but I think the community would be almightily impressed if we were able to come back to the community and suggest to them and state to them that that 35% emissions reduction by 2030 has already been achieved, or somewhat. The majority of it's achieved with what's happened and the moves forward in across all of those areas that Councillor just mentioned. So I think we might be closer to that 35% emissions reduction already.
Thank you. Any further discussion, councillors? Councillor Chapter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just in closing, I think another point on waste is that I know we've tried in the past, but we've somehow have to reduce it in the first place. Like, I know we've had higher level meetings years ago, I have to be present, on why are we getting so much packaging, for example. Why does everything come wrapped 2 or 3 times? So then we, council, ratepayers, are then paying to dispose of all this waste somehow. So what are we doing to discourage the creation of waste in the first place? And that was one of my points in bringing up the food waste. But there are so many other examples. We have to also concentrate our efforts and our education on eliminating waste in the first place by not creating this extra packaging, not throwing out food that can be used. And we could go on and on. I know a lot of this is out of our control because things are imported from overseas and they're nicely packaged up with foam and everything else that never breaks down. But there are a lot of areas where we can perhaps do some more in education of reducing waste, not to create it in the first place.
Thank you. Any final comments, councillors? If not, I'll put the motion. Those in favour?
Aye.
Those against? The motion is carried. Item 8.3, Councillor Betts and second Councillor Maxwell. Thank you. Councillor Betts, do you wish to speak to your motion? Any councillors wish to speak against? Any councillors wish to speak against?
Just specifically, Mr. Mayor, just against a minute within that report, 28/2021, the proposed horseshoe car park. I wasn't a big fan of seeing that, taking more green space, moving a car park close to those man-of-war gates, historic gates, and also to the War Memorial that's not far from there as well. And, you know, we don't often do car parks really well in terms of shade. So that's going to be an addition to another big black hot space in summer. I granted the palm trees that are there, but they provide precious little shade over the total area of that car park. And we see the car park at the airport and the car park on Riverside with no trees to provide any shade to people that might park there. And I think I'd love to, if, you know, when we're talking about increasing car park spaces, which we obviously need to do, I'd like to see that it incorporates shade as well to cool those very hot, large spaces in the 40-degree temperature days that we get at times.
Thank you. Any comments, councillors? If not, I'll put the motion. Those in favour?
Aye.
Those against? The motion is carried. Item 8.4. Councillor Wilson and Councillor Webb, thank you. Discussion. Councillor Wilson, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Briefly, Mr Mayor, I think it's quite sound reasoning here. We've got a margin of above what's required for storage is ample, but it also makes sense to continue with the design and pre-construction activities, so that should we need something or some circumstance suddenly change, then we're ready to go with the extra structure. So I think it's well-rounded, sound plan.
Thank you. Any councillors wish to speak against the motion? Any councillors wish to make comment? If not, I'll put the motion. Those in favour?
Aye.
Those against? The motion is carried. Item 8.5. Move Councillor Betts and Councillor Webb. Thank you. Councillor Betts, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Just very briefly, Mr Mayor, an excellent report. The survey, I read the report, and actually read it twice, and I read the annexes as well. And we attended the workshop that really highlighted some of the aspects of it. And that was conducted to about 500 people. They were anonymous, and it was from a broad cross-section of our community that actually didn't single out anywhere that was a particular issue. And what it highlighted to me is you look at social media and some of the other sort of more vocal outlets of where you see people talking about things in relation to our drought management plan. Some of the things that really brought it home to me was I think it was about 43% of people thought that by saving water through water restrictions, that they would prolong the supply of water in the water supply. And we don't own that water. And if we save every litre of it, it's just sold on. And we need to change that aspect through the water sharing plan and through the minister. But the other thing is it was 53% that thought that Tamworth Regional Council actually owned Chaffey Dam and controlled Chaffey Dam. We don't. We're just a customer. And those are the sorts of things that we do need to get out to the broader community, that the ownership of the dam, and also that if we do save water, that it will produce a longer lifespan of our security. And I think that's absolutely critical that we need to get that through to the water departments and the minister. Thanks, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Any councillors wish to speak against the motion? Any councillors wish to make comment? Councillor Wilson.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. A couple of things. It's a great report, and it really reflects some really useful information for us, which we will benefit from having. I absolutely agree with Councillor Betts. I was horrified to see that the majority of people thought that we managed, Tamworth Regional Council managed the water. We don't own Chaffey Dam, and we don't manage it. Had we managed the water, it would have been managed well, and we would have had water that was more secure, nevertheless. But it certainly is a good report, interesting information, and all credit to the department, because that directorate, because they spent a lot of money where it had to be spent in preserving what water we had, And we can feel at least that we managed our water with integrity and caution. So it's achieved what we set out to do.
Thank you, Councillor Webb.
Yeah, Mr Mayor, I think we can take heart. This survey's delivered some pretty good responses to us. A couple of concerning ones, like council runs and owns a dam, that's a bit of a worry. We've worked very, very hard, don't we, Mr Logan, to try and get the message out to the community that we actually don't own the dam and we don't own the water, that we're just a customer of the New South Wales State Government. But I think what gave me a lot of heart was when I looked, there's 500 people surveyed. So there's a couple of pointing things there that say it's a very good survey in terms of across the board. We've got 51% female participants, 49% male. It's a pretty good spread. And just as importantly, 69% homeowners and 31% renters. Now we know from other statistical information that about 35% of the people of this region rent their house. So that tells me this survey is a very well-rounded survey and it's been well put together. And congratulations to all those involved. And it's given us some pretty clear thoughts on what our community think. Most surveys that we get, I don't think really tell us what we want to know, and that is the truth of what people are really thinking. But I think this one does. And I think those points there in that line that I've just mentioned tell you that it's a very well put together survey and it's a very across that community survey. So I think we can take the information out of this survey and do with it what we will, but I think it's probably very accurate reporting.
Thank you. Further comments, Councillor Impey?
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I think there was a little echo in the room. I think council doesn't own or manage Chaffey Dam. Council doesn't own or manage the water within Chaffey Dam. I think we really rely on our good friends in the media to help share that message. But perhaps it should be a little bit of a blurb before every single story on water, period, that council doesn't own and manage Chaffey Dam and council doesn't own and manage the water within it. Just a thought.
Further discussion, Councillor Inglis.
Mr Mayor, just some observations beyond the survey, and that's in relation to the new draft water management plan, and I think it's good that we've changed the name from a drought management plan to a water management plan. I think that's a good move, but the way I see it is it's going to be tricky just working on the time frame and saying that basically, workshop in June and then after that public exhibition and all the rest of it. In the consideration of the new water management plan, what's going to be our attitude in that plan, because trigger points are very important as part of that. For example, are we going to include 100% usage of the new Chaffey pipeline? Because that'll have a big influence on the water management plan strategies, policies, particularly the trigger points. Are we going to include the new Dungowan Dam? And if we are, how much of it? So I'd just like some comment from Mr Logan about how he intends to, because that makes it very hard for the staff. And we're going, if we're going to stick to that timetable, clearly we've got to make decisions on those things. And as you know, some of those balls are still up in the air. So it's very tricky, the timing's tricky. I just can't help but think that, delaying it, is that more prudent till we know some of those answers?
Mr Mayor, I think, well, first thing is, I can probably answer the second one. Dungowan Dam won't be finished for a number of years, and therefore we won't have the benefit of that water that might be stored in there for some time. So I don't think this present drought management or water management plan has to consider Dungowan Dam initially, because it'll be 3 or 4 years or maybe even 5 years. So that'll be out on the cycle of we presently review the water management plan now. So that could probably be held off until the next review. In relation to the pipeline, yeah, that's an interesting one. If the government did make a decision that they were going to allow the pipeline to be used, then it would have a significant effect on our present trigger points, I believe. My advice to the council would be that I think we should proceed with what we know at the moment, and what we know at the moment is pipeline isn't going to be used except below 20%, and on that basis I think we should continue, and if it changes then we can review the plan at that point. That would be my advice.
And I concur with that advice. With the very latest of information that's available to us, I think that's exactly where it's heading. So there doesn't seem to be any appetite to change that that emergency management framework, I guess, that that decides that the pipeline will only be switched on effectively when the dam's at 20% capacity. So I agree with Mr. Logan.
Mr. Mayor, if I could offer a comment. I just think the review of the water management plan, I think, is a tremendous opportunity for council to be able to demonstrate the difference in those two scenarios. That maybe the water management plan should be, should the state government maintain the current operation of Chaffey Dam, then this is where the trigger points would have to be for the community. But if they allowed us to use it all of the time, then this is where the trigger points would be, and it would illustrate very clearly to the community the value of that asset, and potentially make the government sit up and take a little bit of notice about what the impact of that operation might be.
Mr. Mayor, that's in fact what we did with the last, or not the last one, the one where Chaffey Dam was, the augmentation of Chaffey Dam was happening or mooted, that we actually had, this is the triggers if the dam doesn't get built, and this will be the triggers when it does. So we've done that before, it's a good idea.
Yeah.
Councillor Inglis.
Mr. Mayor, the General Manager just frightened me then, because that's exactly what I was thinking.
Now you're frightening me,
Councillor. We should be bold, and particularly with the pipeline issue, and have the various scenarios, maybe 3 options on it. What it means if it stays at 20, what it means for the trigger points and the whole basis of water management generally if it was used, say, at 50%, and a scenario maybe of 75 or something, because there'll be a substantial difference, and that will absolutely highlight the stupidity of the 20% threshold, because it's a nonsense.
Thank you. And Councillor Inglis, we will have time to put all that information together. We've got quite a few months before we need to get to decision time, so I think that's a great idea. And maybe are you prepared maybe to put a second point in the recommendation along those lines?
Mr. Mayor, if you think that's a good idea and the councillors also think it's a good idea, I'm happy to. Oh, well, you've got to move in a second.
Yeah. So, yes, so
Absolutely,
Councillor Webb,
Mr.
you're
Mayor.
all supportive of that. So there we go.
Absolutely.
If you can just give some guidance, Councillor Inglis, as to what you'd like that second point to look like.
What have we got? That a community survey receive and note the report, and that the report include trigger point scenarios for options on the approved. What's the technical term they use for the 20%? They're calling it what? It's an
emergency.
It's the amount in the dam, isn't it?
Yes.
Options on the approved dam storages for use of the Chaffey Dam. They're still calling it the emergency pipeline? No, dropped that, have they?
Chaffey Dam pipeline.
For the Chaffey Dam pipeline.
Okay.
Should you put in the word in their levels, dam storage levels?
Dam storage levels, yep.
Yeah. Okay. Any further comments, councillors? If not, I'll put the motion. Those in favour?
Aye.
Those against? The motion is carried. Item 8.6. Councillor Tickle and seconded Councillor Empey. Thank you. Councillor Tickle, do you wish to speak to your motion?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's encouraging to see the progress that has been made. And as per the recommendation, we need to have ongoing communication and education, which would include residents, developers, tradespeople and other relevant stakeholders. Prior to the implementation of the DCP Amendment number 14, there were a number of successful workshops and information sessions. We need to organise more of these, as we have not yet reached all the stakeholders. We also had some wonderful communication via fact sheets that were freely available at Greywash House and at other points, and these were invaluable in trying to educate people and get the message across about what is grey water, what is water sensitive urban design. So we've done some great things, but we need to continue on with the marketing and the education, but as I reiterate, to include all stakeholders, which includes tradespeople and developers. And we need to promote the types of grey water devices, promote the affordable and the achievable. Grey water gravity diversion device, for example, is very affordable. The pump diversion device also costs much less than the more expensive treatment works that is actually quoted in the report. But some people choose to do that, to treat all the water and use it down through their toilets and in the washing machine and on their garden. I believe that I believe also that we should revisit water rate bans, not just in the context of grey water recycling and the DCP Amendment number 14, but I think it's been raised before in Council that at some stage we need to revisit that. I'm a firm believer that saving drinking water should be an incentive in itself without having to necessarily have a financial incentive. And we need to get people thinking that way. And in fact, so many people do think that way. I know we're quoted on the number of tanks that have been provided a rebate for. However, all the same as me, on a daily basis you see tanks going out on the back of a truck. They're being delivered somewhere. So it is happening out there. Not everyone necessarily replies will be eligible, or if they are, even apply for a rebate. However, I acknowledge that it has helped a lot of people to install tanks and systems, and but there are a lot of items on there I think that we should perhaps reconsider either the amount that we give or whether we continue with the report.
Thank you. Any councillors wish to speak against the motion? Any councillors wish to make comment? Councillor Inglis?
Mr Mayor, just for the purposes of the minutes, but table 1 on page 45, the numbers don't add up. So just if someone can correct that, please.
Thank you.
Table 1 on page 45.
Further comments, councillors? If not, I'll put the motion. Those in favour?
Aye.
Against? The motion is carried. Item 9.1. Councillor Inglis and seconded Councillor Webb. Councillor Inglis, do you wish to speak to the motion?
No thanks, Mr Mayor.
Any councillors wish to speak against? Any councillors wish to make comment? Not, I'll put the motion. Those in favour?
Aye.
Those against? The motion is carried. Item 9.2. Councillor Webb and Councillor Maxwell. Councillor Webb, do you wish to speak to the motion? Any councillors wish to speak against? Any councillors wish to make comment? Councillor Inglis?
Mr Mayor, yeah, look, there's a whole stack of comments you could make, but at the end of the day, they're going to do what they want to do. Yeah, we're able to make submissions, but they're going to do it in a way where whatever they agree to put in, it's going to go back to councils as a non-mandatory provision in relation to the code of meeting practice. So in other words, a council can, whatever they allow, you'll be able to put it in or not put it in. So at the end of the day, individual councils, but in saying that, I think some of the things that they've got in the discussion paper, there's a couple of things there that I find, you know, for example, the giving the power for the council, in other words us, or a committee where all councillors are on that committee, the ability to refuse a request from an individual. Good Lord, talk about political mayhem for those councils that have party politics, and but that's one of the proposals, to actually give the elected members the authority to say no. We're not going to let that individual, you know, that's incredible. And then having said that too, I think the whole 5-day notice thing too, gee, an awful lot of people will be in a situation where you don't simply know 5 days. You're supposed to let the general manager know 5 days before the council meeting. God, if only the world was that organised. I mean, I think that's really unfair, Mr. Mayor. For example, there are many far west councils where councillors live 250 kilometres from the council, and they live on dirt roads, and you can have 5, 6, 7 mil of rain, and guess what? You're not leaving the property. Well, it may not rain at 5 days before. So there's a lot of holes in it, but it is what it is.
Does anyone, councillors, wish to speak against the motion? Are there any councillors wish to make comment? If not, I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Aye. Those against? The motion is carried. Item 9.3. Move Councillor Webb and Councillor Betts. Thank you. Councillor Webb, do you wish to speak to the motion? Any councillors wish to speak against the motion? Any councillors wish to make comment? Councillor Inglis.
Just a question, Mr. Mayor, on two questions. Page 48, the 150k business case for purified water treatment. If I could just get some info on that, what is that? And on page 47, I notice it's got lease terminated, $17,850. Just curious what that is too, Mr. Mayor.
It's the first one.
Mr. Mayor, the 150,000, the report came to council about this is a proposal to investigate the possibility of council owning and operating a recycled water treatment plant and supplying recycled water or purified water to industries out in Glenartney. So specifically the new Bayarda Super Abattoir and also some of the other food consuming or high water consumers in Glenartney and in the new TGGP. Council agreed to fund that study, the preparation of a business. Preparation of a business case to go to the government and petition the government for funding to help construct it. The government has said that they will. They originally said they would fund it, but they're now saying they'll part fund that business case preparation.
Okay, and your other question again?
Page 47, lease termination, $17,850.
Cheryl.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I do, if my memory is correct, that's a property that council owns in Bridge Street.
Yeah, Federation Place. Thank you. Any councillors wish to make comment? If not, I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Aye. Against? The motion is carried. That brings us to item 9.4. Councillor Inglis and Councillor Maxwell, thank you. Councillor Inglis, did you wish to speak to the motion?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, with a heavy heart I move this report. It's I'll tell you what, Mr. Mayor, if there was ever going to be a fiscal year of discipline, it's going to have to be the next 12 months. And interestingly, we have a local government election in that 12 months. So I hope whoever is here after the elections shares our enthusiasm for fiscal austerity. But on a serious note, Mr. Mayor, I'm a big fan of the old operating performance ratio, because that's the old relationship between your operational revenues and your operational expenditure. And at minus 4.18, that's not a good number. Not a good number at all, particularly with the year before it was around 6%. So that is a significant deterioration in that operating performance. So this next financial year, we are going to have to be very vigilant, and I would imagine staff will be regularly reminding us that for any new projects, guess what?
No.
You're going to have to take something out. And fair enough too. So I make that observation, Mr. Mayor. The buildings and infrastructure renewal ratio, 159%. I do find that hard to believe, but what a wonderful number. I'll have a chat privately to see where that number comes from, but I don't think that's right. Mr. Mayor, we've got a heavy reliance in there on land sales, so that needs to be said. We need to keep a close eye on that. I see the old automatic water meters are in there, Councillor Webb. Did you pick up on that?
Yes, I did.
Excellent. $6.5 million loans. Mr. Mayor, in the fees and charges, the hall fees I notice in there on application to the committee. We probably should just check that, because under the Local Government Act, of course, hall committees cannot set their own fees and charges, and that's reading, if I'm reading that right, that's saying they do set their own fees and charges. They're not allowed to do that. They can, but we have to approve it. You can't delegate under 377 to anybody the power to make a charge or fix a fee. So that we might just need to tidy that up. And I notice there are significant increases in the higher fees at the Youthy, but I assume there's sound reason for that. I'd be interested to see if we get any feedback on that. And with the sports domes fees, Mr. Mayor, I see there's some good increases in higher fees. Does that go through the sports committee, Councillor Rodder? Those fees and charges before they go in here? Are all the users out there aware of that?
No, often that will be a surprise to some of them.
But in summary, Mr. Mayor, it's going to have to be a very disciplined year on behalf of the council, and it'd be interesting to, and I'll catch up with the senior staff. I'd just like to have a chat about, just to get my head around, what percentage does everyone believe that deteriorated position is as a direct result of COVID? Because I know for many councils it's a punishing year, and I assume I've sort of got a bit of an idea on it, but it'd be just good to get a handle on that, because apologies, but I was away when the workshop. Yeah, when the workshop was on.
Yep. Okay. Any further comments, Councillor Betts?
Yeah, just briefly, Mr. Mayor, I'm frightened that like Councillor Inglis was frightened he agreed with the General Manager. I agree with Councillor Inglis on most of those things. But look, it is going to be a difficult year. There's just no question on that. But there is some really light at the end of the tunnel in a lot of areas, because there has been some very, very astute financial management that has allowed us to be in a position now that we have withstood a lot of the impact of this COVID. And I think that our staff really need to be commended, because there has been a lot of sacrifice within the organisation to actually make it as efficient as possible, and we need to really appreciate that. One thing I will say, that attending the workshop last week, that the new format for public exhibition for the operational plan I think is excellent, because it's very much a pictorial type of sort of presentation, and all the detail is drilled down. You can drill down, and the community can drill down in underneath that, but it gives a very good, concise overview of where we are and where they need to go. So the staff, I think, need to be commended on that. That's me.
Further comments, councillors? If not, I'll put the motion. Those in favour?
Aye.
Those against? The motion is carried. That brings us, councillors, to item 10.1. Move Councillor Inglis and Councillor Wilson. Councillor Inglis, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Oh, Mr Mayor, just quickly, as chairman of that committee, the minutes are there. I just wanted to take opportunity to congratulate Bridget and her team and her staff and everyone involved. I mentioned last time the minutes were up that we put in for that Regional Cultural Fund, the digitisation program, and I think it was $309,000, and we've been successful. And it's a fantastic thing because it'll involve part-time jobs for about 5 people, First Nations position within that, looking at digitising First Nations history, our galleries, and of course all our museums, including country music a lot. So, and it's also a skill development program in digitisation for the Northwest. So it's a fantastic program, and well done for getting that. I think it's going to be gratefully received. I know the regional film people, for example, they think it's fantastic. It'll take that whole to a new level, and as we all know, that makes it accessible to everybody. So, great thing for that, Mr Mayor, to get that program.
Thank you. Any councillors wish to speak against the motion? Any councillors wish to make comment? If not, I'll put the motion. Those in favour?
Aye.
Those against? The motion is carried. Item 10.2. Move Councillor Wilson and Councillor Betts. Councillor Wilson, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Just briefly, Mr Mayor, this has been a great project. I was a bit interested when this came up. I can't believe the positive response this gets throughout the community, and it's talked. I hear conversations regularly between people about how much they like it, when the young ones are together with their children. And I've got a granddaughter, I guess, 2 weeks old, who will get one of these books on the process and the system. Nevertheless, it is really wise to review it because it comes at a cost, but it's certainly to address an existing condition in our community where our literacy levels do need to be increased, and by putting books in homes that don't normally buy books or where children are not normally exposed to a book has made a big difference, and children get quite excited when they come. So it's a great program. I think we're the only region in Australia where 100%, there's virtually 100% take up on the opportunity to have one of these come to your child each month. So the community supported it, and the hospitals really supported it in the way they've carried that, and the libraries really supported it. So it is worth carrying on, but it does need a review at the end of 23-24.
Thank you. Any councillors wish to speak against the motion? Any councillors wish to make comment? Not, I'll put the motion. Those in favour?
Aye.
Those against? The motion is carried. And councillors, before we make, I ask for a motion to go into closed council to consider those items 11.1 through to 11.12. Could I make an offer to any members of the public? Would they like any of these matters brought forward into open council?
Mr Mayor, could I foreshadow some business on 11.8, please?
Yes, you most certainly could. Councillor Webb, does it have any confidentiality implications?
No.
No. Okay, I'm happy to take that motion now.
Councillors, I've been away a little bit lately, but I am very aware that there's been a lot of media around this particular item, and I've become aware that the NRMA, this is a Kalala Lane and Campbell Road intersection upgrade. The NRMA have bought into it within the media, and I've asked council staff what has been their comments or questions to us, and I've been told there hasn't been any. So I want to ask Mr Mayor, or seek an approval that you or the General Manager write to the NRMA and ask them if they want to make comments in the media, why aren't they coming to us? And if they have comments, then we need to, we are the authority in charge of what goes on here in terms of road constructions and road management. why aren't they talking to us? I think it's a bit rude, to be honest with you. But I would ask, with the support of the other councillors, if they would support a motion for me to actually write to the NRMA and ask them what's going on.
Mr Mayor, I think the way you'd handle this is that would be a matter arising from the report, and given that the council's going to make a decision about the acceptance of a tender, it's really up to you whether you accept it as an urgent item to write to the NRMA asking them to provide us with that their formal position.
Yeah, I think we should write to them. I don't know that should necessarily change the course of the council process.
I'm not expecting it should either, but I think that we should
certainly ask the question, yeah.
Make note of that, and we should make note of that in public arena.
So councillors, if we have sort of general agreement with that, I don't think we necessarily need a motion. We should have a motion.
As part of the formal meeting process, so Councillor Webb will need a seconder for that.
So you're happy to put that in the form of a motion?
Yeah, Mr Mayor, that we do write to the NRMA and ask them what is their position on this and why haven't they contacted us as the roads authority.
Thank you. And seconded by Councillor Maxwell. Thank you. So, councillors, are there anyone wish to speak against the motion? Any councillors wish to make comment? Councillor Wilson.
Sorry, could there be a second part of that motion inviting them to come and discuss, with us?
I'm not Mr Mayor, I'm not inviting them to come here, I'm inviting them to give you us a response as an organisation. When they go to the media and they don't come to the roads, I'd like to know what's going on. So I don't think we don't need to invite them here to talk to us, we need to ask them to formally respond to us as the roads authority.
Okay, we have a mover and a seconder. Councillors, are there any councillors wish to speak against the motion? Yes, we have Councillor Maxwell.
Councillor Maxwell.
You just want to put it up here. Haven't put it up
So I'll open the floor for comments. Councillor Rodder.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just in relation to that foreshadowed motion, what would be then the impact on 11.5 and 11.8? Would that delay them, or should it delay them, considering we're requesting concerns, they provide their details of their concerns?
Councillor Rodder, I don't believe it should, displace the process of council's, core business. The very fact that we haven't received any formal notification, or we haven't in fact received any correspondence, any discussion at all with the NRMA, I don't think we can consider what we don't have. I'd certainly argue that the process should take its course, and this is a question that we ask as it's almost a governance question of the NRMA, how they, is this trial by media, or is it, do the NRMA have a genuine safety or an engineering concern? We've got no idea. So, Councillor Betts.
Yeah, thanks, Mr Mayor. No, I totally support the motion. The NRMA is not a regulatory body, and this report and this roundabout design has gone through Transport New South Wales, who are the regulatory authority when it comes to the regulations associated with any road infrastructure, and it has gone through the police on a thorough review through their organisation. So I totally agree. Ask for the NRMA from their governance, because there's a lot of bodies similar to the NRMA that have similar impact on the community, and they haven't contacted us. Well, thanks, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Any further comments, councillors? If not, I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Aye. Those against? The motion is carried. So now, councillors, could we have a motion to move into closed council to consider those?
Sorry, Mr Mayor, just want to take you up on that offer about hearing matters in open council.
Yes.
If I can proceed, item report 11.3, expression of interest for sale of 8793 Brisbane Street. Item or recommend report 11.7, expression of interest for sale of Cable Avenue, Tamworth. 11.9, Nundle Go for Gold Festival, opportunity for major sponsorship, and 11.10, Chaffey Dam pipeline operation. As these are matters of public concern, I would just ask that we be hearing those in open council rather than closed.
Process there. You need a seconder to move them out of closed, Mr. Mayor.
We have a seconder to move them out of closed into open.
Mr. Mayor, I'll just comment to councillors, you have to understand, councillors, that if you do move into open council, you can't discuss any aspect of those that are commercial in confidence around amounts offered, negotiation processes, any of those types of things. So you can definitely have a conversation, but it needs to be in a way that you don't disclose any of that confidential information that is contained within those reports.
So I'll ask again, councillors, do we have a seconder for the motion? Appears we don't. Councillor Roddy, your motion lapses for want of a seconder. So, how do we
Take
vote?
action to move them all into closed, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, a motion to move into closed council. Move Councillor Maxwell and Councillor Wilson, thank you. Any further discussion on that motion? If not, I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Aye. Those against? Motion is carried. Now I'd like to invite all those members of the public
Councillors, this report of the closed session of the ordinary council meeting held on the 27th of April 2021. In closed council tonight, you considered 12 items. For item 12.1, there was a minor amendment to authorise the affixing of the seal. For item 12.7, dot points 2 was to advise the proponent the offer wasn't accepted, and dot point 3 was added to hold a council workshop to discuss. And for item 12.9, the motion in the business paper was replaced with a motion to decline the offer of sponsorship and to seek other sources of funding, including government assistance to support the 2022 Go for Gold event. For each of the other items, that's 12.2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, 10, 11 and 12, we accepted the recommendations as per the business paper.
We have a motion to accept that report. Councillor Impey and Councillor Wilson, those in favour? Aye. Yes, carried.